continuare o să-l invit aici lângă mine, pentru că urmează o parte foarte interesantă de dezbatere. O să-l invit pe Ionuț Sibian. Gata, l-am văzut, că nu-l reperam. Ionuț Sibian, pe care îl salut cu mare plăcere și îl invit alături de mine pentru a modera, a facilita un dialog cu invitații pe care o să-i prezinte imediat, după ce o să spun și eu două cuvinte despre comoderatorul din această dimineață. Ionuț Sibian, director Fundația pentru Dezvoltarea Societății Civile, care fundație reprezintă un hub al societății civile care de mai bine de 25 de ani contribuie la dezvoltarea sectorului neguvernamental, ce reprezintă un indicator pentru starea comunității în care trăiesc cetățenii. În foarte scurtă prezentare, pentru că sunt convins că cei mai mulți, dacă nu toți, vă cunosc deja activitatea. Domnul Sibian, vă rog, e momentul să-i chemați alături pe speakerii din această sesiune. Mulțumesc! Se aude? Dacă nu, încercăm cu alt microfon. A funcționat.
Încercul ăsta, engleză sau română?
Română.
I prefer to speak in English because all my speakers in the panel are foreigners, so it will be much more easy to have English as working language. So thank you, Mihai. Good to see you. Happy New Year to all of you. I'm happy to be with you today here. I didn't expect such a big participation in the second day of the conference, so congrats to the organizer for putting this together. And I would like to invite the 6 speakers that I will moderate today in the panel to join me here. Masha Wolinski, Victor Sula, Kerstin Wahlberg, Pablo Zapata, Jean-Benoit Manet, and Jean Saslavsky. Okay. Please, whatever you feel comfortable. Yes, please.
Hello.
Masha, you could join me here if you want. Perfect. So, the panel, the title of the panel, it's called Expert Panel, Dialogue on Opportunities for Advancing Actions that Promote the Integration of Refugee and Localization of Humanitarian Assistance in Europe. When the war started, we were quite unprepared, let's put it like that, because even in our experience at Civil Society Development Foundation, we used to have not more than 2-3 projects in our portfolio, funding portfolio, dealing with refugees. So there were very few organizations that they had services or advocacy initiatives or staff even that was skilled in working with refugees, and they had interest in this topic. But the things went quite smoothly, and a lot of NGOs in Romania, they switched immediately their services to address the refugee crisis. And I think we've done quite a good job at civil society, in partnership, of course, with authorities and with international organizations. And the idea of this panel is how we will continue in working on this, and how we'll create an infrastructure, at least in the area of civil society, for working with refugees. So here with me are 6 panelists, and we have the timing there on the screen. And I will start with Masha Wolinski. Masha is working with European Program for Integration and Migration. It's actually an initiative gathering 25 private foundations with the goal of strengthening the role of civil society in building inclusive communities and in developing humane and sustainable response to migration in Europe. And I have 2 questions for you, Masha. First is how the 25th private foundation that you work with react when the war started and the refugee crisis was on the move. And has these 2 years and working with refugees from Ukraine changed the way you work in similar contexts, and what you will do different in the future based on this experience?
Hello, good morning. Maybe I'd like to start by saying thank you for the invitation. I feel slightly, maybe I'll have a slightly different perspective than the rest of this panel. As you mentioned, EPIM is a private fund and it's relatively small. To try to answer your question, originally EPIM was founded with a mandate for structural change and very rarely would get involved in emergency response. But obviously, as you mentioned, Ukraine, the war in Ukraine and the big influx of refugees into Europe changed that. But I think what remained throughout the past 2 years for EPIM has been a focus on sort of a bottom-up approach. We came in really trying our best to listen to what was happening on the ground. EPIM realized very quickly that the situation was incredibly fluid and that there was no way to mandate or dictate what needs to be done. Needs were changing very quickly, and it was very important for EPIM to really listen to what was happening, what the actors that were present previous to the war on the ground were saying, what the beneficiaries really needed, and then to invest in really productive projects that were not only focusing on the needs, but we're also focusing on empowerment of refugees themselves and migrants and other migrants. And I think the learnings for us have really been that we have to, I don't think it's that different from how EPIM did things before, but I think trusting partners on the ground, really understanding what their needs are and being flexible enough to allow them to do the very fast-paced work that we saw in 22 and 23. I think for us that also includes actually a very important but often overlooked aspect of limiting the administrative burden on our partners, really allowing them not to focus on everything that we need, but really doing what they need. Now I think we're at a different stage. We're looking into an uncertain future, but a future that's going to be different than the past 2 years. And what we see as important for, I think, all of us, for particularly for the Central and Eastern European region, is to use this momentum, the positive learnings that we've seen, the negative learnings as well, things that we've seen that haven't worked, to use that momentum not to focus just on one group, but to really build inclusive societies in our countries. And I'm really speaking not just about Romania, but I myself am based in the Czech Republic, and I sort of see this whole region that has all of a sudden, for the first time since World War II, accepted these large numbers of newcomers and has mostly welcomed them, but we do need to understand why that first response was positive and how we can maintain that energy, that positivity and inclusivity. A big part of that for us, so good with time, is supporting new or maybe renewed partnerships. I think this is something we've been talking about for the past 2 years, promoting partnerships that may not have existed prior to this crisis, but that really allow not just CSO partners, but governments and private partners to provide a holistic approach, not just to look at a migrant or refugee as a single person, but to look at them as part of an ecosystem that includes their family, their surroundings, but also the whole of the host society. And providing those holistic solutions, I think, is key. And we get there by creating partnerships, but also by empowering migrants themselves. This is something that I hope does not change in the next few years. We have seen a lot of Ukrainian refugees, but also Ukrainians that have been living in Europe before the war, step up and really offer their perspective, their expertise to help their fellow countrymen and women. And that is something that needs to continue, I think, not just for Ukrainians, but for other migrant groups. And it's key to creating that inclusivity for the whole of society in the way, from what we've seen in the work of our partners. And I think I'll finish there.
Thank you, Masha. And you mentioned the issue of trusting partners on the ground. And I think this was, in case of Romania, probably the first problem that we had. International organizations and donors to trust the local partners, not necessarily the big organizations in Bucharest, but organizations outside Bucharest, even that they didn't have experience working with refugees, but the services that they were doing could fit with the refugee crisis. And I'm looking here to Anna in Galați, when the problem with Isaccea crossing from the Danube, more refugees coming from that side, we looked to the first city, that was Galați, and were the organization. There were no organizations there working with refugees, so some of them that were working with kids, they had other type of services. They were really flexible and were astonished and appreciative about their efforts and their volunteers in order to switch immediately to the emergency needs caused by this situation. So trusting local partners was difficult in the beginning. Some of the donors, they try to come with their recipes from war zones like Syria and other, but I think at the end of the day it was quite a good experience. And I liked this idea of ecosystems and renew partnerships, and how you do keep those partnerships and work also for other migrant groups in the future, because I think for the EU, climate change and migration are the two, let's say, topics that will hit the political life of the Union in the future. And I think Central and Eastern Europe, it's more and more part of this, let's say, trend. Now we are going to the second speaker. It's Victor Sula, task team leader on social protection and jobs at the World Bank. World Bank has a long history of supporting countries impacted by refugees. Thank you for joining us, joining the panel today, Victor. And my question to you is, what was the involvement and support of World Bank to the Ukraine refugee crisis, and any other refugee response in Europe? How the bank is supporting the countries it's working with on these efforts?
Thank you very much for inviting me and the World Bank to this forum. It's my pleasure to be here. I've been in Romania already for 3 years, and we work extensively on labor and social protection issues. When the refugees crisis, the war started approximately 2 years ago, for us, for the World Bank, as for other development partners and organizations, it was a big challenge at that time. So we supposed to switch our normal operation, where we support the governments and the private sectors in their development, to the emergency mode to support both Ukraine and other countries, of course, in terms of refugees. In Ukraine, we have a very extensive program where our investment was close to $38 billion, and we have a large-scale technical assistance package. But also in the other countries where we work, like Romania and Poland and other countries, we provide support to the countries through our normal operation. In Romania, when it started, the war started, we provided support in 2 main channels. One, it was a budget support, and the second one is a technical assistance to the government. The budget support is manifested in 2 DPL, development policy loans of €1 billion that supported the government in various issues, but the focus was support of the emergency support. And it was immediately dispatched, and investment was specifically on developing of the immediate measures at that time to accommodate the refugees coming to Romania from Ukraine, of course. It included, of course, many of you know, the key measures of accommodation, changing the legislation in terms of eliminating barriers for the employment, for the occupational, also accepting people to the public employment service, ANOFM, and so on. The package of measures was supported of the World Bank and, of course, other development partners, and this was a series of the loans that we continue working on them as we continue working on them now. But what I want to focus now actually on our second pillar. It's a technical assistance that the World Bank provides to the government, specifically to the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, in terms of their policy measures on how to address the issues of the refugees. So from the very beginning, the World Bank was supporting Ministry of Education in terms of development of framework of support for the children. As of course, we know the large proportion of the refugees are children who come in here, and the issues, barriers they have to get into the education system was very significant. We engaged in analytical work with the support of the European funds. We carried out this analytical work, looking at the needs assessment for the children, looking at the barriers they have, also looked systematically on the side of the curriculum, how Romanian and Ukrainian curriculums are aligned, and what could be done to better address those issues, those differences. But also we looked at the placement of the children and systematically carried out surveys to see how the Ukrainian children could be implemented, could be engaged in Romania. So these recommendations were carried out, was provided to the Ministry of Education by our education team. My team and I, we work mostly on the social protection and labor issues. From the very beginning, we were part of the teams that provided recommendations on how the labor market should react to the refugees, influx of the refugees, specifically of the short and long-term measures. And I already mentioned some of them were actually were introduced in the development policy loans, but we specifically brought in international experts and worked systematically with the ministry to see how the barriers could be lifted, how they could be engaged, and more specifically, how they could be linked to the public employment service. Important to mention that we also carried out a pilot in Cluj where we tried to connect, to see how the refugees could be connected to public employment service, which is a very difficult task because they are very different people than the regular people who usually go to the public employment services. Here, their first time actually were able to see the people with a tertiary education and getting to the public employment service that usually designed to cater for the other type of population. Also the language barriers and so on. We work also systematically on other group. We, as part of our engagement, we work on ANPD, which is agency dealing with the people with disabilities, how specifically address their needs, how they could be incorporated, and also we supported on development of the policies for the elderly refugees. The last but not the least, I want to mention another analytical work that we carried out jointly with UNICEF. We conducted analytical work and we published it last month on adaptive social protection system. It's essentially how the social protection system should react and reacted in Romania towards different types of crises. And this particular crisis was a case study where we looked systematically what worked and what not. And it's a very interesting study, happy to share with you, but clearly showing that the current social protection system, while actually working not bad, but the way it was designed, that the refugees were supported mainly outside social protection system, not from the systems inside, with their databases, with their systems. And it's a big problem that the system actually exists, but it's a rigid and not flexible enough to make, to address the issues of refugees as an example and others. So essentially this analytical work system and support to the government are the key areas of our engagement, and we continue this support further. Thank you very much. Exactly 7 minutes.
Thank you. It's very interesting to find out, your focus on this issue. And I think, for instance, with the educational part, definitely you overlap with the activity of NGOs. A lot of the organizations that I see here in the Romanian organization, they have educational services for Ukrainian children. Then one of the issue that at least one of the organizations, I don't know if they are here, Ateliere Fără Frontiere, Workshops Without Borders, it's about employing employability of those people and how you create, services for children in order to have the adults, the mothers, able to have a job. And I'll be very keen to read your work on social protection system reaction toward the crisis. Do we find it on the World Bank's website?
Yes, it's on the World Bank and UNICEF. It's our joint study. It's published there. And if you look in the Google, Adaptive Social Protection, ADP, Adaptive Social Protection Romania, it will be there.
Okay, thank you. Now we are going to our third speaker, Kerstin. It's a dear friend of our foundation, but also to the sector, because as you know, European Economic Area for many years is the biggest supporter, donor of the third sector in 12 countries, new member state countries, plus Portugal. EAA just announced a new package for a new deal for a package for those countries, including quite significant allocation for civil society for the next years. But what is most important is the fact and the dialogue we'll have today here. It's the way you adjust your intervention in those countries in order to respond to the refugee crisis. I remember that immediately at the end of February when it happened, we got a phone call from Oslo and then from Brussels, and asking us to think how we should rethink the program, the Active Citizens Fund, in order to answer to the emergency situation. But it was not just the civil society program, but also other programs that were adjusted to answer to this crisis. And one more important detail that I would like the public to know is that you were posted here from Kiev, so you had a direct experience there during all those terrible days when everything started in Kiev. So thank you for being with us today, and now the next 7 minutes are yours, Kerstin.
Is it on? Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here. As Unit said, I came straight from Kiev and here, so if you don't mind, I will just start briefly to say something about the time before the Russian invasion and after. I was there before, and I was there about a year in the war. And in Kiev, I worked with our technical assistance and development support, good cooperation with World Bank and others, the UN system, but also worked with the humanitarian response. As you know, the war didn't start in 22. It's ongoing for many years. My first impression when this all happened was that maybe for the first time I realized really the importance of civil society organization, about local NGOs, because even if we now can look back and say that Norway, the international society, turned around, we were flexible, we found new ways to give our support. In the first days, when the invasion was a fact, what happened, it was that civil society, neighbors, local communities just stood up, took responsibility, created collecting centers, schools, musical venues dispersed centers where they collected humanitarian support, where they went from house to house to see what people needed. They received internally displaced refugees within the country. This happened immediately, and it wouldn't maybe happen like that if it wasn't for the creation of these civic society organizations that already existed. They were already there, they were already functioning, they already knew what's around in the local communities. So my point is that to strengthen and support civil society is not only about wartime, it's something that we need to do all the time. as I said, when I worked in Kiev, I worked mainly with our development support, technical assistance, which didn't have so much room for humanitarian support or for, especially not to support small local NGOs and so on. So very soon we had to be more flexible, and what happened was that we allowed existing projects under development support to reorient and to address the crisis. But as long as they were already working in a field where this came natural, you cannot be a heart surgeon if you are a car mechanic. So, of course, it had to be in a scope where people already had the possibility to do so. And then I came here and I started working with the EEA and Norway grants, which you explained about. And very quickly, we saw the need also to support within the neighboring countries because of the refugee crisis and what it created also in the neighboring countries from Ukraine. And on the global level, we allocated about 11 billion euros to address the crisis. But here to Romania, we also, I think they got quite a big part of it, around 3.1 billion euros. That would mainly challenge it through the civil society organization, through Active Citizen Fund, for example. The mechanism as such, this works in mechanism, it's periods, and the ongoing mechanism is ending this year, and we were waiting to see what comes next. And as you also mentioned, we are very glad to see that the program will continue, and not only continue, but the support to civil society organization is increased. And I think that will be increased, and I think that talks for itself, actually. This is a strong signal to the civil society that this is important work, this is needed work, and it needs to be stepped up, and we are here to support this work. So I think I will stop there.
Thank you, Christine. Just to mention an important fact, the support provided by EEA, it was of course projects in each of those countries, but it was also these cross-country initiatives. For instance, some of organizations in Romania, they work with organizations in Poland or Republic of Moldova, or Slovakia or Czech Republic dealing with refugees. And I think these partnerships are important in terms of exchange of experience and learning, also now and also for the future. Just to mention that also Norwegian civil society is very involved in this support toward Ukraine. In summer at Arendal Suka political festival, one of the main topics was, okay, how will be involved as Norwegian civil society in reconstruction of the Ukraine, and how the next support for civil society in Central and Eastern Europe will look like in the future. So I think also this is an important aspect, that everything that your government is doing, it's in for civil society in the region and in Ukraine, is correlated with your Norwegian civil society.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And if I may just add also what is actually very close to my heart, and a very important part of it is to remember, we are talking about the crisis, and the crisis, it happened to, it affects all of us, because we have received refugees in most countries here in Europe, but we don't talk so much about the resource these refugees are. It's easy to talk about vulnerable groups, that they are people in need and we have to be stepping up, we are supporting them. But we have to remember that this is people with resources. This is people with education, with experiences. So this is also something that benefits us. It's not only us supporting, but actually we are also getting something back. And the challenge for us will be how to address it and how to use this as an asset.
Yes, because of our countries are in desperate needs of labor force. Next speaker, Jean-Benoit Manes, a Senior Emergency Coordinator, UNICEF Romania. Of course, all in this room, you know UNICEF. You've been supported and working with UNICEF probably since 90s. And of course, when we talk about refugees, especially for children in need, we think about your organization. During my trips to the border, always we've seen you there, sometimes alone in an organization, sometimes working with a local organization, delivering services to them. And my question is, what are some key areas you focus during the Ukraine crisis? And what are the plans for the future? Because the support for some of the projects of the Romanian civil society organization in response to the crisis was channeled through UNICEF, actually.
Thanks. As you say, you know, we've been here for a long time. We are driven by UNICEF by big principles, you know, children's rights, and so is the EU, by the way. And what we discovered in this crisis is that, you know, in France we have a saying, you don't make good policies with good principles. What does that mean? It's too easy to just advocate for, oh, you know, children should have a right to integration or education or health or become, I would say, citizen. Yeah, no one contests that. But the how? And what we've been fighting from the start, and I think that the role of civil society was key for that, was really fighting against easy assumptions. Meaning, Romania is an EU country. Yeah, sure, that's a fact. Does it mean that Romania by itself, the government, and local governments, by the way, can do everything without any support? No, they already had challenges before the war. So I think, you know, this assumption that we are in a high-income countries, so we just need to do some sort of advocacy and coordination, that need to be revised. Of course, UNICEF, we are better or stronger in organizing immunization campaign in Burkina Faso, in providing water in Gaza, in providing nutrition in Somalia. That we know how to do. Working in a high-income country, that's not something, I have to say, that's at the core of our DNA. So we had to learn a little bit. And what we had to learn, as I said before, is that advocacy principles are not sufficient. And one key example, and in the beginning there was this survey on, you know, what do you think the principal needs are? First, I think that I don't know what the principal needs are. I mean, that's why, you know, it was really interesting to have those consultations. And we saw at the beginning, and actually even during the middle, and even now, that these consultation mechanisms are still lacking, especially for children. So it's too easy for us to decide what's good for them based on general principle. Second element, I think children is not one monolithic group. I mean, and we saw that. We have early childhood, we have children of primary age, we have adolescents, we have girls, we have boys, we have children with trauma, we have children with disabilities. And again, it's too easy to plan, I would say, a global perspective on let's work with children. That's really something that actually, you know, I myself alone don't have the capacity to do that. And even with my team. So that's why we also need, you know, those constant interaction, alert, feedback from NGOs to tell us what the real situation is. And let's come back to the needs. We saw that education, for example, was mentioned almost 75% of the time. But the same. I mean, no one contests that education is something that children needs, want, require. What does that mean? I mean, we had huge debates at the beginning. Oh, let's send them to school. And sure, let's send them to school. Will it provide them with education? Well, you know, we have language issue, curricular issue, certification issues, mental health issue, because, you know, you enter new countries, you can have some bullying, aggressivity, you can feel cut away from home. So I think for me, what's really important again, and what we learned, is that we need to go beyond those kind of self-reassuring messages. Children are important. Children are the most vulnerable. Children need education. Children need support. Yeah, of course. No one will disagree on that. But what really struck me in this emergency was what kind of difference there can be between principle and the reality for each individual child. And that's really something that I think the role of civil society is key to help us adapt, alert, and mitigate. However, I don't have an answer to your final question, because I think the only thing, the main thing, children are, you know, resilient, but they need stability. Do we know what will happen in 3 months? As regard, we talked about social protection before, and I really, you know, I'm super happy with what the World Bank has done with us. I'm really happy with what Norway and the EU. Yet, I think the main fear, the main concern for children, for civil society, for ourselves, is indeed stability. And if we know that, you know, this support will have to fade away or be adapted, and that, you know, we need to aim at integration or inclusion, which is not the same, because many refugees, and we spoke about refugees and migrants, and, you know, words have their sense, it's not the same. Do we want integration? Do we want inclusion? Do we want just choice? That's something we need to advise. But again, my main message is this one. Let's not be self-satisfied with, you know, what we've done, which was great, because more is to be done, with general principles on needs for education, health, inclusion, social policy. Yes. But how concretely, for every single child, does it translate into a concrete change and vision and stability? And I think, again, let's avoid building some super nice project. And believe me, I've seen so many super nice projects here I'm really proud of. But that will collapse tomorrow morning. And how do we look at more integration? I think the government is key. And by government, I mean the central government, I mean local authorities. But I think there is a role also for civil society. And, you know, again, sorry to speak about France. I'm French, you might have guessed from my accent. In protection, for example, 75% of the work is done by civil society. But not, you know, in an autonomous way and doing whoever wants, wherever they want, because there must be agreements, there must be control, there must be quality, there must be vision. And I think that's where we need to aim at. Not giving the baby to the government saying, well, you know, it's your role, you're part of the EU, you've got money, take care of that. Yeah, that's their primary responsibility. But do they have a loan to take care of it? No, I think there is a role for civil society, there is a role for UNICEF to try to facilitate, advocate, support when we can, and it's not over. And actually, that's where we are entering right now, is a difficult zone where we have less money, we have less presence, but our goal, our need, our added values are there more than ever.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that, you know, we could do very nice things, UNICEF, civil society, but at the end of the day, you know, local government and national government are key in our work. And our hope also now, there are several advocacy initiatives here in the room by organizations, is how you know, we'll move forward. Is not just the issue on linked with Ukrainian refugees, but in general, how the Romanian authorities will do more in doing their job at the end of the day, and not letting NGOs to do things that are in their job description. My last panelist, it seems that Pablo is on the way here. Hopefully he will make it. Jean Saslavsky is director for a program operation for Care France. Care International is a 70 years old global confederation working to fight poverty and social injustice in the world. Care was among the organizations that came to Romania in early spring to work with their local partners here. The contribution was quite significant that they brought to all these efforts. And my question to you, Jean, is what was your experience in Romania, and what was different than your previous experience in your work?
Thank you, and good morning to you all. It was, I'd like to address that because it was a completely different way for CARE to work on this specific crisis. When coming here, I saw on the program that CARE was mentioned under international intermediaries, which is a fairly new way of describing us, and that gave me some thoughts. Are we really international intermediaries? And maybe that's our new role. Maybe that's the way we should see ourselves. I think it links up very well with the title of this conference on Rethink Bridges, being an international intermediary. Maybe that's the role we should have, and move away from the way we've been working for many years. Of course, we've been working in partnerships for decades, and we can always improve the way we work in partnerships. That has been discussed a lot yesterday. But the way we responded to this emergency was completely different. And I would like to address that with a few examples on staff, fundraising, and compliance, which are three of the main concerns of NGOs today. So normally the first thing you do when there is a crisis, you send a country director to the place, and we decided not to do that. We had a partner in Romania, SERA, for 20 years. So of course, why would we need a country director when we have a partner who's been there for such a long time in partnership with us? So basically, the country director is the head of SERA, and that's the way we worked. So we did send some staff, but more to support when it was necessary, according to the needs expressed by SERA. And this is not a regular partnership, as it has been described a lot, and the way NGOs have been doing it for quite some time. This is really a shift in power because it's basically SERA deciding on the operation and CARE supporting what SERA wants to do. So that's a big shift for us. So we did provide some support in coordination, in reporting, when according to the needs. And regarding the staffing issue, it just changes everything on the way we work, because we normally hire expatriates who are very enthusiastic. They want to go abroad. They want to save the world. And this is a very different approach to that. We need to explain when we recruit that your job is not going to decide everything when you arrive on site, but to serve the local partner, to answer to the needs of the local partner, and to just provide support, and to be not in a role of leadership of the response, but of supporting the response of the local civil society. So it's a very different attitude, and even in our recruitment, we need to change the way we recruit. We need to change the job description, the type of person that we will send, because they need to completely understand that their role will be to support and not to lead and decide on everything. Basically, their role is to help partners, to help beneficiaries. So this is very much that role of intermediaries. We are also working on trainings, specific trainings for staff, in order to do that better in the future. The second issue is linked to fundraising and communication, and of course there's some kind of a romantic way of presenting things when you appeal to individual donors in donor country. Usually, the scheme is to describe, a French expatriate who has the courage to go abroad and save lives, and that's the way NGOs have been fundraising for many years. Now, of course, it's completely different, and we need to educate the public. We need to make them understand that our role is to support local civil society. And when you explain that properly, people do understand, because we always have it's always a good choice to strengthen civil society, to have more resilience for the future. And just one example outside of this specific crisis, there was the recent earthquake in Morocco, and our role was really to support civil society there, and not to send a whole team as an emergency response. Regarding communication, we also need to change completely the language. So this is what we will be doing in the coming months also in Care France. We have a whole work on the language, how we speak about each other, how we describe our work, because the work is now different to us. And the third aspect of it, which is very strong nowadays, of course, is compliance. And there's a very heavy burden, of course, on compliance, and we all want transparency. But to give you an example, our national donor has about 80 pages of description of procurement policy. So, of course, we cannot just transfer it to local partners and say, please apply that. We need to simplify that to them. We need to help them. We need to train. And this is more a message to our donors also, that we need also to be able to support that in our program in order to keep that high level of transparency. Compliance is a lot of work. It needs to be taught. It needs to be trained and understood, and that's a big part of what we will be doing also in the future. Compliance and reporting. There would be, of course, other topics, and we know that other topics will change in this way of working. For example, security, governance, all of that, of course, has to be transformed if we transform the way we work as being more international intermediaries. Of course, advocacy will be affected also. So beyond the efficiency of the work, we all know, and the Grand Bargain has put that forward, that the local response is quicker, more efficient, and that you don't have efficiency if you don't work with local partners. But beyond that, we really believe that strengthening local civil society, it's always a good choice, and this is what we will be doing in the coming years with CARE. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so there was a lot of change that brought to your organization this experience. I was quite interested about the change in language and the way you do fundraising and explaining your interventions now. And it was not just Romania, but now we mentioned that Morocco, it's also a shift in the way you used to work. Now we have with us our last speaker. Welcome. Pablo Zapata, probably most of you know him from the last almost 2 years of work here. So UNHCR, they are one of the most important players in this crisis here in Romania, but also in the region. We all receive their emails, and we participate in the last 2 years in their meetings. And a lot of Romanian civil society involved in this effort received support, or they were in partnership working with UNHCR programs in Romania. And the question that organizer put it in the agenda, it's about complementarity between different donors that you aggregate in order to support this effort and your future work in Romania and in the region.
Super. Thank you very much. Pleasure being here. It's very interesting. I have there 7 minutes, 6:59, 6:58, 6:57. So it's very interesting. Probably they know me that I normally go beyond the time. So first of all, wishing everyone a good 2024. I think it's still customary for you, your families, your organizations, and more importantly, the persons we serve. That's, I think, the objective of being here and reflecting together. The Ukraine crisis was very particular on a number of things, and one of them was about the overall issue of, or had an impact on the whole issue of localization. Was a crisis, for those who do not know, I arrived here on day 10 or 11 of the crisis, so I arrived here on the 6th of March, initially for a month, then for 3 months, and we're still around, as many of you. And by the time we were increasing our operations, and not only us, but also colleagues of UNICEF, and I think every actor, non-governmental and even governmental institutions in Romania were trying to step up at the same time our response. In a context where the donor interest to the Ukraine situation was overwhelming. It was, and it remains, a crisis with geopolitical implications, and the refugee flow was, as we all know, the sharpest and steepest since the Second World War in Europe, or anywhere in the world. The interest of donors and the interest of actors that started to come as from week 2 from abroad here as well, created as a situation whereby we had serious constraints in growing, and I can see in the audience several of us that we went together through that together. So a need to grow, serious constraints to growing, a lot of funding, and not much clarity about what were the needs and where to do them. So there was a lot of learning by doing, I would say. At the same time, the crisis happening in affecting Romania, but affecting other countries, happened in the industrialized world, where, among other situations, we had well-functioning governmental structures that were and remain on the lead. We had a clarity of purpose nationwide, and this was beyond the organizations, beyond us. It went through all corners of society. We had high levels of commitment, and we had this enormous need to scale up resources to do it, but serious problems in capacity to do it. For us in UNHCR was also a learning experience in the sense that one of the main problems we faced in 2022 was, and allow me still to remain in 2022, and I will move in the final 2 minutes to 2024, etc., was that we had serious problems to partner with organizations. So we had a set of partners already, national NGOs, very solid national NGOs, that we had been working on asylum and refugee issues for years. They were the first ones to scale up. And they literally went through a lot of pain in order to do so, and they did so excellently. But then at the time of establishing new partnerships for areas that we were not working in before, it was very difficult to find NGOs that would be willing to partner. Because simply everybody had a lot in their hands, and they say, listen guys, we would love to partner with you, but we have just too much money from our donors, too many requirements, and we have this problem to grow at this point. So we cannot add more complexity to the equation. To the point that rather than finding then we started to explore the usual suspects, let's say, NGOs, national, international, and we were getting flat no's. So we had to go through the long process, which was an expression for cause of interest, which in an emergency is very, very unusual that you do this, because it takes longer time. But at the same time, it was the only way of trying to attract a pool of NGOs that would have the capacity, the interest, and the perspective not only in the shorter term, but in the longer term. And there we had a pool of organizations that we work with. And from the beginning, the majority of these organizations were Romanian NGOs for obvious reasons. First, there was also a legal issue. International NGOs were not authorized to operate in Romania, and that was, some of them had taken over a year, the process of certification in Romania. But more importantly, the Romanian civil society was already very strong. The challenge we had there is that, as probably for UNICEF and other international agencies, we tend to partner with an organization for the whole country. And the additional challenge we had in Romania was that the NGO scope of action was geographically fragmented. So if we wanted to have a meaningful intervention on gender-based violence, for instance, or immediately on livelihoods, we had to resort to different NGOs for different parts of the country. And that added more complexity to the equation. So I will not continue adding complexities also because I almost ran out of time. But just to say that it was extremely challenging to, and if you still see our programming in UNHCR, and if you still see the refugee response plan for Romania, it's a puzzle where you had different actors in different counties of the country providing similar services and similar levels of assistance to refugees from Ukraine. Now, both at the level of the RRP and at the level of our own UNHCR programming, year by year, national NGOs have taken a higher preponderance in terms of funding and in sheer numbers. And let me just get some here. For instance, at the level of UNHCR, if we look our budget for 2022 for partners, national NGOs were more than, received more funding than international NGOs, 5.3 million to 3.1. In 2023, the proportion is even higher, 8.5 to 2.9. And if we go to 2024, the proportion goes increasingly higher, 4.1 to 163,000. So that speaks also about the maturity of a program and the option in order to have the capacity of actors that know the environment, that have the capacity, the resources, and of course, the knowledge to deliver. Then, another set of figures. If we look at the 2024 RRP, the request by different actors, the total funding we are requiring is $153 million, 153.6. And here we have an imbalance, but then it gets in a way explained. UN agencies are asking the big share, 57%. And I have to say that UNHCR within that is asking for the bigger share. International NGOs are asking for 30 million, or 20%. And national NGOs are asking for 36 million, or 23%. If one would see that figure by itself, one would say, okay, there is a serious imbalance, and there is, in terms of the first recipient of funding. But then if you understand that UNICEF, or IOM, or WHO, or us in UNHCR operate mostly through national NGOs, the situation gets more composed and balanced. And if you see at the level of implementation, in 2023 already was higher national NGOs than the direct implementation of international agencies plus the direct implementation of international NGOs. And that process is going to be even more marked. In the RRP also we have seen, for understandable reasons, in 2022 the number of national organizations part of the RRP was fairly small, because also this concept was very alien concept. This refugee response plan, what is that, what is the benefit, what are the implications, what do we need to do, etc. There was very little interest also because everybody was trying to implement at the same time. The interest grew in 2023, and has grown for 2024. And that also, and here this is the final reflection, the relation between localization and funding available. As the funding dwindles or is reduced, the incentives for huddling up, a little bit like the penguins in the Antarctica. I'm from Chile, so I'm pretty close to the issue of penguins and Antarctica. In the winter, the incentives are higher. And we see a number of NGOs that had their own funding and their own sources of funding in 2022, 2023, appealing to donors in a more within the RRP context also in 2024, and they had not done it in 2023. So our message to donors is we need to work on localization directly for NGOs, but also through the programs that we implement. That process, I think, is only going to increase. We, of course, don't know for how long instances like the RRP are going to be around. And we are launching next Monday on the 15th, the 2024 RRP. And by the way, the opening of the launching will be done by a Ukrainian refugee in Romania, Anna Shuteeva. And she will open with her testimony the launching of the RRP. So my summary would be a lot of complexity for emergencies of this complexity, again, sorry for the repetition of word, where there is a lot of donor interest, when there is a big pressure to grow at the same time, where mechanisms of coordination seem less attractive and appealing, and as the situations mature, things seem to be falling into place as they should. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulo. Now, I would like to open the debate with the participants. We have 15 minutes, and there are some mics there. And please.
Ionuț, I'm going to help you with the questions. Since we saw that you enjoyed the Menti, we're going to ask you to, I know you've been waiting for this session, so if you can take your phones, we're going to put up a QR code, and you can put your questions through Menti. Try to check the questions of the other people. If you think that's an important question, vote for it, it will go up, and Ionuț will ask the panelists. So try to see what others are feeling, so we don't repeat the same questions, and we make the most out of the time. So you can scan the QR code. We're going to ask you to put the name of the speaker you would like to address the question to, and the organization you're representing. And Ionuț will be seeing the questions on any of the screens. And please check what others are asking as well, so that we don't repeat the same questions and we make the most of the time. Over to you, Ionuț.
Thank you. So let's see what are the questions, right?
No questions, we're fine.
Yeah. Although there were some
Maybe until
hands.
then we can take one live one.
Yes, because there was...
Oh, there's one. First one. We wait until the end. We're going to ask the questions first, and then we're going to add things.
Okay, so Paulo, the first question is for you. What are the plans for this year?
So our programming in 2024 will look pretty similar to our programming in 2023. We have undergone a reduction in the budget of approximately 10%. I think that sounds familiar to pretty much everyone, and quite frankly, a 10% in the current circumstances doesn't sound so bad to us. So we keep the same national structure with offices in Bucharest, in Galați, in Suceava, and field presences in Constanța and in Timișoara, changing Iași for Constanța. In terms of partnership, we have the funding the areas in which we will support the refugee response remain pretty much the same, probably with a higher impact on, or a higher prevalence of providing support for, so the axis is really moving drastically towards inclusion. And inclusion not only in terms of livelihoods, and economic inclusion, but also social protection and providing legal support in all areas related to inclusion. The other area that we will maintain, particularly because the governmental program of financial support for refugees has not really been regularized and there is a lot of delays, is quite a strong component on cash assistance, what we call cash for protection. So the evolution there has been the blanket approach for everyone into further and further into assessing vulnerabilities together with partners and then focusing the assistance to them. That's what I could say in 3 seconds, because there's more questions.
Thank you, Pablo. I don't know the vote for those questions. I see one there. I think it's for all participants in the panel. What you would do different now, if will be February 2021 with this experience of 2 years, what would be different in your approach? Who would like to start? But very brief.
Very brief. I saw a question on Education Hub first. Just to say, we will continue till the end of the school year, and that's a problem because school year does not coincide with calendar year. So we can commit till June. After that, we'll probably advocate for complementary activities like Romanian language and after school. Reading project proposals, as Pablo mentioned, we are guided by the RRP, and I think that's where exchanges shall take place within the coordination groups. There are working groups in each sectors, and that's where I would say any idea and submission shall take place. What I would do differently from now, I mean very little, but I would try to advocate with you to help us raising the profile of Romania. I mean, it's not, of course Pablo is in the leadership for that and he's doing a great job, but I think because there are so many other crises in the world and which, I'm not here to judge which one is worst. I mean, you can always compete on that, but I think advocating with the media, advocating with private sector, advocating with donors that, crisis is not over and there are still needs, that's a common job. So my thing, and I think Pablo also led that, is that it's not a vertical situation where UNHCR guides the UN, which guides the NGOs, which support the government. It's really a joint partnership and joint action, and I think that's where we are now on a much more horizontal approach.
Maybe quickly on our side, what we would do differently is to prepare more for crisis. You're never enough prepared for crisis coming up.
Yeah, I wish I could come with a very good and nice news. I think I'm in the situation here that representing Norwegian government and the EA Norway grants. We are in between, as I said, periods. It means that the ongoing period is finalized this year, and we are waiting for the signing of the new agreement that will come up. So when it comes to the grants and the EA Norway grants, it's channeled via, let's say, the national focal point in Romania, but also through the Active Citizen Fund as it works right now. And the projects are under the different programs and funds, and also the calls are launched on that level. So unfortunately, I cannot say send us an application, even if I might wish to do so.
The question, what we would do now, I would rather address not what we would do differently in the past, but how current period is different from the past. We definitely the previous 2 years were more emergency response to the immediate short-term goals and setting up for longer term. Now we are coming to this mid-term where many of the systems already accepting the migrants, and here is implementation. So, for example, our focus now is really support the public employment service in how they engage and cater for the refugees. We supported the government on the VMI program. It's the poorest people social protection new program then in place. How we link potentially the refugees to the government programs that are actually out now, that would be thinking for us. It was a major services legislation passed by the government in this year that will change the way the services are provided in the country systematically. How to engage and include refugees in this setup of services this is our question now. So it's more implementation of the long-term goals now that we are as different to the past.
Thank you. There is a question that stopped there.
The most popular one.
The most popular, if they're in the organizations here on the panel, there are foreseen calls for this year. You already.
Well,
yeah.
in our case, we just had a process of open call for partners in the area of livelihoods, and we just closed that, and we have that closed. I think for 2024, the number of partners we're working with is quite well established, and I do not foresee any new calls or etc. at this point. Yeah.
Thanks. And on our side also, we are in a strategy of switching towards more reliance on local system and government. Also, we know the problem. There will be a call for proposals probably in March, but more for the contingency. So it will be just in case situation degrades again, we will want to have some partners in reserve. So it's not open for funding, it's open to get priority for funding if situation worsen again, which we, of course, don't hope for. Otherwise, as Pablo mentioned, we are more in a situation of stabilization of the current situation. So.
Can I comment on that question?
Yes, I think there was a question on the future funding. So we've been channeling funds through the network FONPC in Romania. So of course ourselves with CARE we are dependent on public and private funding internationally. This, as you all know, has reduced. So we are sorting out exactly what's left and how we can contribute in the future.
So now the second most voted question, it's about the advocacy for better integration of children.
I would like to comment on this because going back to the question of what I would have liked to be different in 2022, when we think about emergency preparedness, we think about staff, things, we think about people, we think about funding, but we do not think about systems, legal systems, and inclusion systems that are prepared to absorb the shock of emergencies. And in this question, you have two elements there, social protection and education, where not only Romania, but all the countries of the European Union were really not prepared for the inclusion of hundreds of thousands of refugees into different countries. And there has been a lot of pain and effort and a lot of frustration on the part of the refugees, a lot of misunderstanding that affects social cohesion, which is another big issue around these issues. And by not having systems that are able to absorb the needs of persons that arrive in a refugee crisis, what we create is a little bit the feeling of a minority that is benefited with some financial assistance and specific services, whereas the local population, the national population, in a similar situation, receives something different. There's an element there. But there's also the element of how well, for instance, and here the colleagues of UNICEF know it much better, but the education system is ready to absorb large numbers of foreigners. Or the social protection system. We still cannot solve the riddle of the social protection system. We are close to do it, but it has taken a long time and a lot of pain. So systems, public systems that are resilient and that are able to absorb, that's something that I think would be absolutely crucial. Sorry, but I didn't answer the question about the better integration of children. Leaving it for.
Maybe I can just a bit out of my scope, maybe, but to look a little bit on the Norwegian response. I mean, the war in Ukraine is not our first refugee crisis, or what say. We also already in 2015 we have Syria. So this is something that is ongoing. I think what's important is to have first of all like a holistic approach to it, meaning that the whole system should have measures prepared for what to do. So when the biggest challenge when it comes to minors, and we also have the issue of unaccompanied minors coming, and we have this period of waiting for asylum seekers where you are in the process not knowing will I get to stay, or will I have to leave. When it comes to minors and children, this has to start, especially for them, from the first second, entering, meaning taking the care of the health, taking care of the education, the living condition. I think this is a cooperation. The police, the migration service, the school, the municipalities. It's something that need to be prepared, and the it means exactly the ecosystem need to be in place and get in force from the start. I think that's most important.
So
thank you.
Thank you very much. I think perhaps
we are done.
The final very short comments, because one of my main duty, and as you already saw yesterday, is to be a bad guy, the policeman of time. So we are close to the final. Yeah, we are. We have to stop here.
Thank you.
And a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you very much. Avem un film acum, da? Nu pleacă nimeni, evident. Daniel a ținut să se asigure că urmăm calendarul obișnuit. Thank you very much. Now we are going to see a movie. O să vedem un reportaj inspirațional, și acesta, ca și cele prezentate de ieri, realizat în cadrul programului Care for Ukraine. Mulțumim, Ionuț, și invitațiilor tăi. Haideți să vedem filmul.
После начала войны, еще где-то месяц мы пребывали в селе, а потом уже собрали внуков, детей своих, и мы приехали сюда. Потом нам Дана помогла, связала нас с центром и нашли нам квартиру. Конечно, она очень нам помогла, потому что без нее нам было бы тяжело, потому что у нас не было материальных, во-первых, ценностей никаких, ни денег, потому что мы приехали сюда по пыхах, собирались очень быстро. Да. Перед войной еще в Одессе у меня определили болезнь, рак. Но я, конечно, не хотела лечиться, потому что началась война, и мы приехали сюда. И здесь мне помогли. Здесь у меня была операция, химиотерапия, радиотерапия. С медицинской точки мне помогала тоже фундация. Всегда были в наличии, когда я что-то покупала, мне оплачивали мои медикаменты. В больнице меня лечили тоже bесплатно. Я благодарна румынскому правительству, что так вот мне помогли. За все спасибо.
Ce pot să spun? Uite, astăzi, în ziua asta din decembrie, Fundația Inimă de Copil împlinește 27 de ani de activitate și sunt 27 de ani de activitate de servicii sociale în slujba copiilor și a comunităților vulnerabile din România. În ultimii 2 ani, într-adevăr, s-a schimbat dramatic tipul de ajutor pe care îl dăm și pentru cine, pentru că am fost implicați încă de la început în criza refugiaților ucraineni și asta a însemnat un suport enorm pe care am început să-l acordăm pentru copiii și familiile din Ucraina. Și ce s-a schimbat dramatic, cred că am învățat să lucrăm foarte rapid într-un mediu multicultural. Am învățat să adaptăm serviciile noastre extrem de rapid. Noi oricum făceam lucrul ăsta, ne adaptam la nevoile celor pe care îi servim, în mod obișnuit. Dar în ceea ce privește refugiații ucraineni, nevoia asta a fost și mai mare, pentru că schimbările erau atât de rapide și nevoile erau atât de dinamice, încât a fost nevoie de o capacitate de adaptare extrem de mare.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Комарова Светлана. Я из Украины, из города Николаев. Мне 41 год. Я в Румынии с ребенком 5 лет. Большие проблемы у меня начались летом, когда ребенок заболел серьезно. Попал в больницу, у него хроническая болезнь крови серьезная, пурпура Генриха Шлеймана. Разрушаются кровеносные сосуды, и мы лежали в больнице. Я очень благодарна румынскому государству, что они так помогли именно в таких тяжелых болезнях в реанимации, они очень быстро реагируют. И дальше еще сложнее ситуация была, потому что я стала себя плохо чувствовать и не могла понять, почему. Может, возможно, из-за стресса и с войной, и с ребенком у меня начались проблемы со здоровьем. И когда я пошла обследоваться, обследование тоже получилось, что много денег. У меня выявили большую кисту, по-женски, в 10 сантиметров. И меня прооперировали, тоже очень благодарна румынскому государству, что мне сделали операцию бесплатно. Но все исследования были там, и томограмма, там очень дорого, там 900 анализы на раковые клетки и так далее, это очень-очень дорого. И поэтому это еще раз привело меня в очень затруднительное финансовое положение. И я очень благодарна организации «Сердце ребенка», что они всегда помогали. Нам продукты, ваучеры на продукты, всегда посильная помощь, потому что мне было очень-очень важно. И в данный момент я обратилась с тем вопросом, что я попала в такую ситуацию, что чтобы мне хотя бы до весны, до тепла здесь дожить, в Румынии, я не могу заплатить за квартиру. И я обратилась, чтобы мне помогли, и опять же таки организация «Сердце ребенка» мне не отказала. Сказали, чтобы я написала заявление, и вот положительный результат, мне помогут, дадут деньги на 2 месяца, и я таким образом смогу выйти с этой ситуации хотя бы до весны. Вам спасибо большое, и организации «Сердце ребенка», я очень благодарна, очень, за посильную помощь, просто даже не представляете, как мне это помогло. В данный момент, когда я одна здесь с ребенком, и иногда просто уже такое отчаяние, и когда вот так помогают, то очень-очень благодарна. И вообще румынскому государству, и rебенка так спасли, и меня, я очень благодарна.
Eu cred că modul în care a lucrat și a ales să lucreze CARE prin SERA și FONPC a fost absolut salutar. Și practic nu au creat o structură paralelă care una ar fi consumat mult mai multe resurse probabil și care ar fi avut nevoie de un timp de adaptare extrem de lung, probabil, ca să ajungă să implementeze servicii și să fie funcțională pe toată perioada asta. Și asta a făcut și ca răspunsul să poată să fie extrem de rapid și adaptat, pentru că, practic, serviciile noastre, ale noastre ca organizație, chiar fără finanțatori externi, au început în primele zile din martie, iar deja la mijlocul lui martie exista un răspuns prin SERA, prin CARE, prin alți finanțatori care au ales să lucreze cu organizațiile locale. Mie mi s-a părut cea mai bună abordare, pentru că criza refugiaților și integrarea lor în România, pe un termen care nu putem să-l precizăm la momentul ăsta, deși mulți dintre ei vor să se întoarcă acasă, totuși nu știm când se va termina războiul și când va fi posibil acest lucru pentru ei. Este dificil să ne imaginăm cum se vor desfășura lucrurile în 6 luni sau un an, când practic mare parte din sprijinul internațional nu va mai exista sau scade semnificativ și când vedem totuși cât de greu funcționează sistemele românești, sănătate, educație, asistență socială, în a acorda un sprijin constant și real în integrare pe termen lung.
Sunt Olga Corețca, sunt din Ismail, regiunea Odesei, 40 ani am și mama 8 copii am cu mine aici în România, 7 copii, a 8 a rămas în Ucraina. Fundația ne-a sprijinit mult, de atât că e prima dată când noi am venit aici în fundație, am fost registrat și încă nu am fost la serviciu, nu am lucrat aici. Pur și simplu am venit după ajutor. Da, atunci ne-a ajutat tare mult, a dat și produsele, a dat și organul, pătură și piernele, tot ce a avut nevoie eu cu copii. Mă întind că am un student la universitatea, ala de 18 ani, el învață de acum a 2-lea an, mulțumim Dumnezeu că îi reușește, îi place, de asta e mulțumită. Copiii, da, am și la școala Aurel Laicu, a intrat clasa 9 în gimnazie, am și la școala numărul 18 3 copii și mici, uite, unul aici e la grădiniță și mai mică, cei de 2 ani, tot așa. Aici la noi în fundație, mulțumit, sper că rămâi aici. Dacă o găsesc apartament unde stau cu copil, că cu soțul cam prost, noi a gândit că divorțăm și eu cu copii rămâi aici, n-am unde plec.